Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Interdisciplinary and Trans-Disciplinary Studies, SOITS, Bachelor's Degree Programs, BA, Philosophy, 2nd year. BPY 005 Indian Philosophy, Part 2, Block-1 Orthodox Systems -1. Unit-1 Nyaya Philosophy. 1.0 Objectives. In this unit, you will learn the Nyayikas' doctrine of valid sources of knowledge and their arguments on self and liberation. Further, you will also learn the Nyayikas' views on God. After working through this unit, you should be able to explain different kinds of perception, discuss nature and characteristics of inference, elucidate Nyaya concept of self, illustrate Nyayikas' views on liberation, examine Nyayikas' arguments on testimony as a valid source of knowledge. 1.1 Introduction. The Nyaya school is founded by the sage Gautama, who is not confused as Gautam Buddha. He is familiarized as Aksapada. Nyaya means correct thinking with proper arguments and valid reasoning. Thus, Nyaya philosophy is known as Tarkashastra, the science of reasoning, Pramanashastra, the science of logic and epistemology, Hetuvidya, the science of causes, Vadavidya, the science of debate, and Anvikshiki, the science of critical study. The Nyaya philosophy as a practitioner and believer of realism seeks for acquiring knowledge of reality. 1.2 Epistemology. The Nyaya school of thought is adhered to atomistic pluralism and logical realism. It is atomistic pluralism on the account that atom is the constituent of matter and there are not one but many entities, both material and spiritual, as ultimate constituents of the universe. By holding pluralism standpoint, it refutes materialistic and spiritualistic monism. It is a system of logical realism by dint of its adaptation, the doctrine that the world exists independently from our perceptions and knowledge. Further, the independent existence of the world can be defended not by our faith or intuition but by the logical arguments and critical reflection on the nature of experience. The Nyaya philosophy recognizes 16 categories, and the first category is known as Pramana, which focuses the logical and epistemological character of the Nyaya system. It professes that there are 4 independent pramanas, sources of valid knowledge. These are perception, inference, comparison, and verbal testimony or sabda. Interpreting the term knowledge, Nyayika says that it may be treated as cognition, apprehension, consciousness, or manifestation of objects. Knowledge is of subjective and objective. Subjective knowledge differs from objective knowledge. If different people give the different opinion on a particular object or a fact, then the knowledge about that object will be treated as subjective knowledge. For example, on a road accident, if we ask different people who were present there, we will find different opinions from them. Hence, the view on the accident is treated as subjective knowledge. On the other hand, if most of the people express their views on an object similar to others, then the knowledge of that object would be treated as objective knowledge. For example, all people agreed that apple is a fruit and eatable. Thus, any sort of knowledge is a revelation or manifestation of objects. Just as a tube light manifests physical things of a room, likewise, knowledge reveals all objects surrounded it. The Nyaya philosophy, is being the upholder of realism, expresses that knowledge is always dealt with object. Knowledge may be valid or invalid. Valid knowledge is called prama and invalid knowledge is called aprama. The Nyaya school advocates that valid knowledge is the true and right apprehension of an object. It is the manifestation of an object as it is. The characterization of valid knowledge is a consequence of the correspondence theory of truth, which states that truth is the correspondence between a proposition and reality. Thus, valid knowledge is treated as presentative knowledge. Presentative knowledge arises when the object of knowledge is directly present to the knower. For example, drive. Biplab perceives a pen in his shirt pocket as an instance of presentative knowledge. Valid knowledge is produced by the 4 valid sources of knowledge: perception, inference, comparison, and sabda. Invalid knowledge is defined as the wrong apprehension of object. It includes memory, smruti, doubt, samsaya, error, viparyaya, and hypothetical reasoning, taka. Memory is not presentative but representative knowledge. Memory can also consider as a source of valid knowledge provided what is recalled or remembered or experienced in the past as a presentative cognition. Doubt is lack of certainty on cognition. Error is a misapprehension of what is cognized. For example, a snake is mistakenly cognized as rope. Error is a misapprehension of what is cognized. For example, a snake is mistakenly cognized as rope. Takar is considered as invalid knowledge because it does not produce any new knowledge. It only confirms what one already knows earlier. Thus, it is representative in nature. We shall now consider the four valid sources of knowledge, pramanas, that is upheld by the Nyayikas. Perception. According to Nyayikas, perception is the direct and immediate cognition produced by the interaction between the object and sense organs. For a perceptual cognition, four elements are necessary. These are the self, mind, sense organs and objects. The self is in contact with the mind, manas, the mind is in contact with the sense organs, and lastly, the sense organs are in contact with the objects. As a result, we perceive objects. There are two types of perception: ordinary perception, laukika, and extraordinary perception, alkika. Ordinary perception is further divided in two sorts: external, bahya, and internal, manas. External perception has five distinctions because it is connected with five sense organs: auditory, visual, tactual, gustatory, and olfactory. In case of internal perception, the contacts occur between mind and the object. As a result, knowledge produces. Examples of internal perceptions are feeling, desiring, wishing, etc. Again, perceptions are divided in three sorts. These are indeterminate perception, nirvikalpa, determinate perception, savikalpa, and recognition, prativijanana. These distinctions are made only in thought but not in experience. Now let us discuss indeterminate perception. Indeterminate perception. A perception is considered as indeterminate when we can't determine its features like color, shape, size, etc. In this case, the sense organs contact with the object and a particular knowledge immediately emerges. Nyayikas named this knowledge as avyakta, which means it can't explain through our vocabulary. In other words, we can't express about the object accurately and clearly. This sort of knowledge arises when self has merely an awareness of the object without having any concrete knowledge of its name, form, qualities, etc. It is basically an underdeveloped form of perception. Its existence is only proved through inference, not by perception. Determinate perception. Determinate perception, unlike indeterminate perception, arises when the knowledge of an object consists of characters, such as name, color, shape, etc. It gives knowledge of the object. As a result, we cognize, it is a tree, he is a man, etc. In this case, an individual can identify and cognize the object as it is. Recognition. The senses contact with the object and recall that whether the same object had been encountered earlier or not. If it had encountered in the past and positively recapitulating the situation and the features of the object, then it would be considered as recognition. For example, Mr. Ranjit saw Dr. Biplab after a long time and recognized him. Here, Mr. Ranjit would able to do so because he encountered Drive Biplab in an academic conference 5 years back. In that time they had spent a very lighter and beautiful moment together. All these events are remembered by Mr. Ranjit. So once he saw Dr. Biplab, he said, "Hey, are you Drive Biplab? I am Ranjit myself. Do you remember we met 5 years back in a conference?" By listening from Ranjit, Drive Biplab said, "Oh, yes, I remember you. Even I remember the moment that we had spent together." This sense of knowledge is called recognition. In this knowledge there is always an element of immediate experience, e.g., Mr. Ranjit met Drive Biplab after a long time in a particular place. Extraordinary perception. Now we will focus our discussion on extraordinary perception, alkika. To explain, it is a perception that provides knowledge even without the senses object contact. In other words, this sort of perception arises whenever the contacts between sense organs and objects occur in an unusual manner. Nyaya recognizes three kinds of extraordinary perception. These are A. Samanyalaksana, B. Jananalaksana, C. Yogaya. Samanyalaksana. Samanyalaksana is the perception of universals. In other words, it is the perception of classes. According to Nyaya, the universals are a distinct class. They inhere in all the particular belonging to the same class. For example, a hen becomes a hen because it has the universal, henus, inhering in it. Another example, we identify a person as man, because that person possesses the common quality of manhood, which we find among other men. In our day-to-day life we perceive only particulars like a table, a cow, a pen etc. But not universals like tableness, conus, penus, etc. Thus, it is admitted that whenever we perceive the particulars we first perceive the universal which inheres in it. These sorts of perception Nyayikas treats as extraordinary perception. Jananalaksana. Jananalaksana perception is a perception through complex association. In this case, an object is not directly presented to the sense organs, but it is retrieved in memory through the past cognition of it and is perceived thorough representation. For example, the ice looks cold, the fire looks hot, etc. Suppose that a person has in the past experienced a piece of ice, its color and its coldness. Owing to such invariable association of touch and color, the person presents in his visual perceptions of ice and its coldness. This results him to say, ice looks cold. Yogaya. Yogaya perception as an extraordinary perception is found in yogis who possess supernatural power. Yogis through their power of meditation can have intuitive and immediate perception of all objects, past, present, and future. The following chart represents the Nyaya distinctions on perception. Look at the screen. Inference. According to Nyaya philosophy, the second source of valid knowledge is inference. It is also known as anumana. The expression anumana is the conjoined of two terms, anu and mana. The word anu stands for after and mana means cognition. So etymologically speaking, anumana inference means after cognition. Literally speaking, anumana is such knowledge which follows from other knowledge. Constituents of inference. An inference is constituted with at least 3 sentences and these 3 sentences are again constituted of 3 different terms. These 3 sentences are named as major premise, minor premise, and conclusion respectively. The major term is found in the major premise. Similarly, minor term is found in the minor premise. And the term which is found in both major premise and minor premise is called as middle term. In the conclusion only major term and minor term are found. The middle term makes a link between minor term and major term. Major, minor, and middle terms are used interchangeably as sadhya, paska, and hetu in Nyaya philosophy. An example will clarify the above analysis. Major premise, all things which have smoke have fire. Minor premise, this hill has smoke. Conclusion, therefore, this hill has fire. Here, smoke is the middle term, fire is the major term and hill is the minor term. In any anumana inference, vyapti, relation must subsist between hetu and sadhya. Vyapti is defined as an invariable, unconditional and universal relation between middle term and major term of an inferential argument. In an inference, knowledge of an object is derived due to previous knowledge of some sign or mark. The previous knowledge is due to the universal relation between the major term and the middle term as being present in the minor term. To explain the above example, it is stated that an individual saw the smoke on a hill from a distant place. By seeing the smoke she relates her previous knowledge that wherever there is smoke there is fire, e.g., in kitchen, in a lamp, etc. Which is a universal truth. Then, she claims that since the hill looks smoky, it implies there is fire. Now let us discuss the major term, minor term, middle term and their brief analysis in an inferential argument. Major term, sadhya. In Aristotelian logic, major term, and in Nyaya philosophy, sadhya, are one and the same. The sadhya is the object of inference. It is to be established. The sadhya is not perceived but it is inferred by us. On the above example, fire is considered as sadhya. Minor term, paska. In Aristotelian logic, paska is same as minor term. Paska is to be perceived, but not inferred. The paska is the subject where we establish something. This something is not considered directly but indirectly. The consideration is depending on inference. Hill is considered as paska on the above example. Middle term, hetu. The term hetu corresponds to middle term in Aristotelian logic. It is also known as linga, mark, and sign. It is found once in relation to sadhya and then in relation to paska. Lastly, in the conclusion, it helps in establishing sadhya in paska. Smoke is considered as hetu on the above inferential argument. Types of inference. Inference is of two types. 1. Swartha or for oneself. 2. Parartha or for others. In case of the former, the inference is intended for own self, whereas, in case of the latter, the inference is conveyed knowledge for others. In the former, it is not required to present the judgment in an orderly manner, since it is personal to the member, whereas in case of the latter, it is necessary to do so. This is so because the correct order of judgment helps an individual to make understand others. According to the Nyaya philosophy, inference for others consists of 5 constituents. 1. This hill has fire, pratijna. 2. Because there is smoke, hetu. 3. Wherever there is smoke, there is fire, udaharana. 4. This hill has smoke, upamana. 5. Therefore, this hill has fire, nigmana. In this inference, the middle term appears 3 times, therefore, it is also known as Tritiyalinga Paramarsa. In this inference, if we remove either first 2 premises or last 2 premises, the inference will not be an invalid and incorrect one. Hence, for an inference we need 3 and at least 3 premises possessing 3 different terms as its basic requirements. Upamana, comparison. According to the Nyaya philosophy, comparison, upamana, is the third source of valid knowledge. The expression, upamana, is derived from 2 words, upa, and mana. The word upa means similarity or sadrushya, and the word mana means cognition. Thus, generally speaking, upamana as a source of knowledge is derived from the similarity between 2 things, objects. It is a source of knowledge of the relation between a word and its denotation, what the word refers to. Example of upamana. A person does not know what a squirrel is. He is told by a forester that it is a small animal like rat, but it has a long furry tail and strips on its body. After some period of time, when he sees such an animal in the forest, he knows that it is a squirrel. There are 4 steps involved in acquiring knowledge of an object in comparison, upamana. First, we have an authoritative statement that a word denotes objects of a certain description. Second, when one observes any such objects he has the knowledge that it answers to the given description. Third, there is a recollection of the descriptive statement received from authority. 4. Finally, there is the resulting knowledge that this kind of objects are denoted by the word is same. Here, it is important to note that Buddhist philosophy, does not accept comparison as an independent source of valid knowledge. On their account, comparison can be reduced to perception and testimony. The Samkhya and the Vaisesika philosophy believe that comparison can be reduced to inference. According to the Nyaya philosophy, sabda, verbal testimony, is the 4th and last valid source of knowledge. Sabda literally means verbal knowledge. It is the knowledge of objects derived from words or sentence. But all verbal knowledge is not valid. Thus, Nyayikas expressed that sabda is a pramana of valid verbal testimony. Sabda is the instructive assertion of a reliable person. Now a question probably comes to your mind, i.e., who is a reliable person? A reliable person may be a Rishi, Malcha, Arya who is an expert in certain matter and is willing to communicate her experience of it. Example. Suppose that a lady came to the side of a river to cross the river and can't a certain depth of water in the river. In this case, she asked a fisherman who is fishing there that, can I cross the river? Since the fisherman is a local person over there and has no enmity with her, replied that you can cross the river easily. Here, the word of the fisherman man is to be accepted as a means of right knowledge called verbal testimony. Types of sabda. These are 2 different kinds of sabda. A. 1. Drishtartha. 2. Adrastartha. B. 1. Laukika. 2. Alaukika. The former classification is made on the basis of objects of meaning and the later classification is based on the origin of words. Sabda deals with perceptible object is called drastat, e.g. table is brown, grows is green etc. A sabda deals with imperceptible object is called adrasta, e.g. duty is God, truth is noble, etc. Laukika Sabda is known as secular, whereas Alkika Sabda is known as divine or Vaidika. The Vedas are spoken by God. This Vaidika testimony is divine and perfect. According to Nyayikas, since human beings are not perfect, only the words of trustworthy person can be considered as Laukika Sabda. 1.3 Theory of Causation. The theory of causation is an important component of Nyaya philosophy. Before going into the discussion of Nyaya theory of causation, let us understand, what is causation? There are two important components found in the theory of causation. One is cause, and another is effect. A cause is defined as an unconditional and invariable antecedent of an effect. An effect is defined as an unconditional and invariable consequent of a cause. Nyaya theory of causation is known as Istkaryavada or Ambhavada. They viewed that effect is produced by a cause, but the effect and the cause are not one and the same. The effect is a new product comes to the existence which was not there earlier in the cause. Hence, every effect is a new product which was not found previously in the cause. For example, a pot is made by clay. Here, clay is the cause and pot is its effect. According to Nyayikas, pot is a fresh creation, a new beginning which did not exist before in the clay. In this way they uphold the theory, Asatkaryavada. 1.4 Self and Liberation. The Nyayikas expressed that there are infinite number of individual self exists in the universe. All those have perceivable qualities like pleasure, pain, etc. They are eternal and all-pervading. According to Nyaya, the self can neither be identified with mind, manas, nor can be identified with pure consciousness, but understood as consciousness belonging to an individual, subject. This is so because mind is atomic and imperceivable and hence devoid from perceivable qualities. On the other hand, consciousness belongs to the individual self but not same as self. Thus, consciousness is not the self but only an attribute of the self. It is an accidental attribute of the self. The self in its original state has no consciousness and hence devoid of cognition and knowledge. But when it comes to contact with sense organs it acquires consciousness. Self is regarded as I, the knower, and it is known through internal perception. Since there is self, there is bondage and hence, aspires for liberation or salvation. Liberation is the state refrain from all kinds of sufferings, and bondage those arises because of the self's association with body and sense organs. Nyayikas uphold association and attachment are the sources of pain and suffering. Hence, as long as self is attached with body and sense organs, it goes through the cycles of birth and death. This implies Nyayikas believe in law of karma. Liberation, according to Nyaya, can be achieved when there is cessation of karmic chain or karmic influx. It is a state where self is detached from body and sense organs. 1.5 The concept of God. According to the Nyaya philosophy, God is the creator, sustainer and destroyer of the universe. He is the efficient, but not the material cause of the universe. The material cause of this universe is the eternal atoms of earth, water, fire, and air. He who desires the universe remains in the state of stability and tranquility. He has the real knowledge of all objects and occurrences. Thus, he is treated as an omnipresent and omniscient being. 1.6 Let us sum up. The sage Gautama is the founder of the Nyaya philosophy. This school, unlike other schools of Indian philosophy, concerns on the valid reasoning to acquire knowledge of the reality. Epistemology. According to the Nyaya philosophy, knowledge manifests with objects. There are two sorts of knowledge, valid and invalid.